With me today is Arturo Rodriguez, who is the CEO of Aterian Inc. Ticker symbol is ATER. What are some timeless lessons you've learned along the way?
Perfect is the enemy of good. If you linger too long to try to get it perfect, you can miss that window or that opportunity when good would have sufficed.
How do you handle adversity, and what are some obstacles you had to overcome along the way?
I think that adversity is kind of what's made me who I come today.
How do you handle risk?
Good question.
And welcome everyone to another Smart Money Circle episode. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Arturo Rodriguez, who is the CEO of Aterian Inc. Ticker symbol is ATER. Arty, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So Arty, I always like to begin. Can you please tell us your story and how you got to where you are today?
My story. Okay. Well, I think I started a little bit different than most. I started at Arthur Andersen, believe it or not. Got my CPA, spent about 3 years there getting the basics, learning corporate America a bit and learning really the basics of financial statements, right? Accounting, through auditing and accounting with balance sheet and P&L. After my 3 years there, I moved over to a company called GT Interactive, which became Atari, the video game company. I spent about 11 years there, various different roles, both in the US and Europe, really working on what initially was the company's kind of roll-up strategy, and we were buying different video game IP and brands across the board. And unfortunately, then restructuring the company down as we had different business plans and management teams come in. Right before Aterian, I spent about 5 years at a company called Kit Digital, which ultimately became Piksel, and that also was another global restructuring effort. I had, again, a few career roles, or I guess career progressing roles to be more clear. And then I ultimately left there and joined Aterian in 2017. I joined Aterian as the Senior Vice President of Finance, and then in 2021 I became the CFO, and then 2023 the co-CEO, and then ultimately in 2024 just the CEO.
Wow, congratulations. I love that story. From an auditor to CEO, I love that. So let's talk about Aterian. Please tell us what your company does and some of your competitive advantages.
Sure. I think, Aterian is a consumer products company, right? We own and operate 6 brands across multiple product categories like, home and kitchen, appliances, health and wellness, air quality devices, paper products, essential oils. And we probably sell those products on Amazon, which is, I would say, is roughly 90% of our business, predominantly in the US. But we've also recently started expanding into Walmart, into Target, both on their marketplaces. Our brands, I think some of you might have heard of, is like Squatty Potty, which a lot of people have heard of. It was a Shark Tank brand, which we ultimately bought in 2021. Then we have Home Labs, which is an organically built brand. We have Mural Living, Pure Steam, Healing Solutions, and Photo Paper Direct. The competitive advantages, it's a good question, Adam. I first tell people our brands. I think we have some of the best brands on Amazon. They're real brands. We have a lot of reviews, a lot of customers follow our brands. And in some aspects, as part of our growth strategy that I've highlighted shareholders in the past, we're looking to go omni-channel. We're looking to launch new products, which we haven't done in a long time. And I think with that success, I believe our brands will become more than just Amazon brands, especially as we enter brick and mortar. Squatty Potty's there. Squatty Potty's in Amazon, it's in Walmart, and both retail and online. And I think, a lot of our brands hopefully will follow that suit. So that's probably one of my best competitive advantages. I think to our people, Amazon is this new thing where a lot of people have been doing it for a long time, but not a tremendous amount of people have been doing it a long time. And so we have a tremendous talent pool of people that know Amazon really, really well. And I think today that's a competitive advantage, especially as a lot of these other companies are starting to realize they have to be on Amazon also. So that's given us an advantage to be competitive across others. And I think the third, I would say, is my supply chain. We have a very unique and nimble supply chain. We're one of the few sellers that are seller fulfilled prime. And just to define that for some people out there that may not know that is means I can actually deliver the products myself with the prime badge, because we've set up the fulfillment network and have gone through the tests and the rigor that Amazon's accepted us in that program. Now, we started doing that a long time ago. We started doing that like in 2017, 2018. So we were one of the first few to do it. Amazon's recently opened it up there, but I think we're part of a small class that actually does it really well and has been doing it, longer than most. I think those are the 3 competitive advantages, I would say.
I love that. And you sell consumers products, so you have a base of a big, I guess, base of customers, for lack of a better word, that are going to buy multiple products, not just the products you have on the shelf now, the digital shelf, but as you expand through acquisitions or through innovation, you'll be able to sell them other products, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah, Adam, you're 100% correct. I think, in fairness and honestly, I don't think we've done a great job historically on that. I think as part of the strategy that we've been looking at in 2024 and the strategies we're rolling out in 2025, I think that's something we're definitely going to take advantage of. I sell roughly 600,000 to 700,000 Squatty Potty stools out there every year, right? And why wouldn't I have something in there that tells our consumers that love our Squatty Potty to go check out Home Labs? 100% right.
Right, right. I love that. Okay, because that means a lot of growth going forward, potential for growth at least going forward, if I hear you
That's
properly.
what we hope. That's what we
Yeah.
hope. Listen, I think in some aspects, the Aterian as I've inherited over the last year and a half is a turnaround story, right? The public results are out there. You could see them yourselves, right? But this is a turnaround. So turnaround stories take time and effort. And I'm very excited for it. 2024, we announced our mantra of focus, stabilize, and simplify, which they really shrunk the company a bit, but really focused it around our key brands. I think, that started sometime in 2024. You're starting to see the results of that and the earning reports in Q2 and Q3, certainly. And hopefully some of that in Q4 when we announce that in March of this year. At the same time, when we do that, we will talk more in details about what our growth strategy and what that means for the company, because I'm excited for it and I'm excited to tell the people, but we need to wait a little bit more until we lock down that audit.
No, I love that. Sounds great. Now let's talk about risk management, Artie. You've been around, you've had a great career. How do you handle risk, and what are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk management?
Hi, good question. So, it's funny. I come back from a traditional background. I'm like an auditor. So like I'm always risk averse and I've been a CFO before. So risk averse is like the first thing that comes to my mind. So, but becoming CEO, it's been a little uneasy letting that go, but also liberating. Like, listen, risk is an inherent part of every business. Like you have to take on risk to sort of drive growth or drive fixes and all that. And I feel like, you know, I think I've gotten comfortable saying, "Hey, we got to make that bet." And I say it a lot amongst my team, my great team. Hey, we got to take a leap of faith here. We got to go for it. And I think that's what I think is good. You have to sort of accept it. You still got to manage it, Adam. To be fair, like can't just like take every risk in the world. But I think you got to learn, especially moving from a finance role to a CEO role. Like you have to take risk on. It's okay. It's normal. And I think the thing that I see that helps us is when we decide to take on risk or decide to go after a product or a new channel, which, no idea if you sell one unit or a gazillion units, right? So inherently it's risky, those investments you make in setting up your systems and your channels. You got to really do your homework. And you'll see a theme and stuff if you get to know me more, I talk about homework a lot, like really drill down it. So when you are taking on risk as a CEO or really any executive level, do your homework, really drill down, think of the options. And I think that's what I think that's what helps me, kind of manage risk or mitigate risk is really drilling down. And though, yeah, sometimes I have to spend hours thinking through these problems or these decisions. I think by doing that homework, it really helps you minimize that risk, even though you know you need to take it.
Got it. No, that's really powerful. So instead of running away from risk, you're embracing risk, and then you're taking smart risks. In other words, lower. If you're wrong when you risk, you're wrong small. When you're right, you'll be asymmetric returns, kind of a thing. Is that
100%. Listen, we're a small company for all intents and purposes. We got a lot of exciting things going on, but yeah, we can't take on really big risks. We got to do little risks and really, really smart planned decisions around, taking on that risk and at the same time minimizing it as best we can.
No, I love that. So let's talk about timeless lessons, Artie. What are some timeless lessons you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with the audience?
Timeless lessons. Wow, I think I've gotten a lot of them over time. I think, certainly never been the day one hero here, but do your homework, frankly. It's always important. I've been around a few different companies that have been restructuring efforts, and you'd be surprised sometimes how much surface level learning people do and not that deep dive. And maybe that's, the finance or auditor in my blood. But man, if you do your homework and it goes back to minimizing risk, but even in general, you're just going to make a lot better decisions, especially when you're leading an organization. And so I've always said that that's, a good lesson to learn about, especially as I telling my 8-year-old to do homework every night. We spend a lot of time on that together. It actually resonates not just for school, but it resonates really in business. Avoid hiring or if too late, removing toxic people ASAP. And it's funny, I didn't learn that lesson in corporate America. I learned that at, waitering at a restaurant that like toxic people can really destroy a workplace. And, I learned that I was probably 20 years old, 19 years old. And so in some aspects, I believe in that. And that's a lesson a lot of companies make sometimes. They just let that linger, and you got to cut that out, unfortunately, right away, or else you could lose your org. And then finally, I learned this throughout my career. I think perfect is the enemy of good. And I think, my former boss used to say it all the time and taught me about it. And sometimes the desire to be perfect is natural, right? We want to be right. We want to be 100% right. But man, if you linger too long to try to get it perfect, you can miss that window or that opportunity when good would have sufficed. And so I think ultimately, it ties into doing that homework. It's important, but you can't overdo the homework where you kind of miss it. Like, hey, if it's good and it's ready, go. Because I think sometimes if you wait too long, you get that boat would sail and you miss the opportunity.
No, that makes perfect sense. So let's talk about the flip side of that. How about timeless mistakes?
Oh, how long is the show? I could be here forever. Frankly. You're gonna see a theme here. Not doing your homework. I'll tell you. I've seen it. Like I mentioned earlier, I see it a lot. Like, hey, we're gonna do this, and we're going that way. And I'm like, man, did you spend a couple hours looking at that? Because there's some obvious issues. And so I think, I've seen a lot of unfortunate leaders and prior leaders just not do that homework, right? And it's really bad, especially when you get to that execution phase, because on paper it sounds great, right? You can make great pictures in a PowerPoint to justify any idea. But if you really don't do that homework, when it starts executing, look out, right? So I think people really have to really bear down and making decisions like that. I think also I've seen a lot is like, and I think, I try to recognizing nothing is easy as is said, right? Like a lot of people say, oh, it's easy. It should take you a week, a month, or, 3 months. Hey, man, nothing's easy. Let's be clear. Nothing is easy. So I see a lot of people underestimate the effort needed. And that, that's a leadership thing. It affects your team if you're underselling or overselling them in that case. So I think really think about your org and your culture and try not to do that, right? You really have to realize that everything takes time and effort, and don't undersell that because it could really ruin an organization.
I love that. Time and effort. It's so powerful. And excuse me, what you said also about perfect is the enemy of good. That's some really, really powerful things. So thank you for sharing. Let's talk about leadership. As a CEO, and you've been turned things around before, you've seen CEOs take companies down, you've seen them bring them back up, you've brought them back up. Let's speak to us about leadership, please. What are some lessons you've learned about leadership that you'd like to share with the audience?
Thanks, Adam. Leadership. Um, People, right? Empathy. I think that's number one, especially now as my first CEO role. Like, it's so important. I've always tried to deal with my people and treat them like humans, like always, right? Because in my CFO role and other leadership roles, but especially the CEO role, because now it's everyone in the organization. It's so important. I spend more time thinking about, like number one is probably the business, and number like 1A is people, right? And so I think the one thing that stands out about it is like sometimes empathy, right? Like really caring about your people. We spend more time at work, as you probably know. We spend more time at work than we do with our families and our friends. And so, we have to appreciate that. We have to give people the understanding that they're human and even the genuine hello, hey, how are you doing? And I know it takes time out of people's plates and it takes time out of your day, but man, it's the fun part of work, frankly, like having that human interaction and speaking to people, especially, we're remote. And so even on a video call, it's just fun to find out what people are doing and understanding what they're going through. And you'd be surprised how long that goes and how much of an effort people would be like, man, that person really actually asks genuine questions about me, my family, my kids, my hobbies, whatever the case may be. And that goes a long way, especially for motivation. And then the other side, you'd be surprised how many people just charge through that office. I remember back when we used to be in a lot of offices, would just charge in and never say hello to you. And they would spend 8 hours in that or 10 hours in that room and walk out and they even say goodbye. And I'm like, man, like I'm busting my butt for that person. And you're not gonna say hi to me, even ask me how lunch was. And so you'd be surprised how people forget, especially when they're super busy. And as you get higher in the executive level, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of responsibilities. Don't ever forget that human effort and the empathy about it. The other thing I'll say, I'll share too, right, is like walking the walk. I've always respected leaders that roll up their sleeves and really get down into the situation of understanding what happens, how it's done, how you do it, how your people do it. And I think that's gotten me a long way in a lot of my roles because it's helped me really kind of relate with my people, right? And I've joked before in my CFO days, like I've done journal entries, I've done AP, not to bore the audience out there, these technical terms, but man, like I've done AP work. Like, so my AP clerk, when he's like, or and she's like struggling, like I get it. I know what you've done. And so I think that applies to a lot of things I do. I like getting down and dirty and understanding what people do and then building it up that way and understanding it because then I can relate. When someone says, hey, I need this next week, and they're like, I don't think I could do that. well, I could easily say no, get it done, I don't care, or like, okay, why? And then talk through it and go, you're right. You need more time. I totally get it. I wanted a certain level of effort. So, all right, take 2 weeks. And so I think that's something that some people forget to recognize, to really understand what your people do. So you don't, again, going back to not overselling or underselling them.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And the underestimating and also you said the underestimating the time and effort needed. I think that's actually brilliant. So thank you for that. Let's talk about adversity. How do you handle adversity and what are some obstacles you had to overcome along the way?
Adversity. Listen, Adam, I didn't come from much. I've been working probably since I was 14. My first job was at McDonald's. Didn't do so well there. Didn't last long, but I needed that money to get through life a little bit and get through college ultimately. And yeah, I've had adversity. It was a lot for me, and it was my adversity. I'm sure people have had a lot harder time than I have, for sure. I'm certain of that. But I think that adversity is kind of what's made me who I come today, right? I think in some aspects, it's like fuel for me. It's kind of like, catalyst. Like I take it in and like, okay, every problem, every challenge or every obstacle has some form of solution. It's a question of how much it costs, how practical it is, how long it's going to take. And so I think in some aspects that adversity, and I've had a ton of it, is kind of a little bit what drives me, right? My earlier adversity in youth, right, as I mentioned, was probably, led me to how I work hard, my grit, perseverance, which I think is things that are very important in today's world. And I think now I've translated that into, I can outwork most people. And I believe I used to be able to outwork most people. I'm getting old now. But, and I think that's kind of learning those things in a younger age, those adversities at a younger age and those challenges. I've been able to translate into like, okay, I can do a challenge. I've been here before. I've been in a lot worse situation. Let's go for it. What's the problem? Let's find the solution. And then either we're going to go tackle it or think through it and find a solution. So I think that's how I look at adversity and how I overcome it.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's almost somebody had once told me the L's are the losses or adversity you take and turn the L's into W's, turn them into wins, right? You want to take that adversity and use it
Oh,
as
I just saw the hands. Good.
yeah,
That's a
use
good
a
one.
W, exactly. Turn into a
Yeah,
W. Yeah,
I
I
tell
love
you.
what yeah.
Sorry, Adam, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say I love what you're saying here. It makes perfect sense. Is you're taking the L, you're taking the adversity, no matter what it was. We've all been through tough times, different degrees, of course, but it's tough to you nonetheless. So you're able to take that instead of being the victim, you become the victor, if I hear
Yeah.
you properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it even goes further than that. Like, not to get into the adversity part of itself, but man, you learn so much more, especially when I've been through restructuring, as I mentioned. You learn so much more from the losses. Like, man, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. A lot of people step in their career and be like, oh, I worked at this big company, everything was great, no problems, and you end up pushing a button all day, like almost like Homer Simpson you would see in the cartoon in The Simpsons. But when you're challenged with losses and adversity like that, especially in corporate America, man, you learn because you have to learn what was wrong, and then you got to learn how to make it right. And so you're learning at double the speed because you're dealing with the situation, the adversity, challenging it, taking that L into a W. But at the same time, you've learned both sides of that coin.
I love that. All right, final question for you, Artie. What is the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or your 30-year-old self?
Oh, man, I would say buy a lot of Bitcoin. When I was 30, it would have been really nice right now. No, but in all seriousness, I think there's two pieces there because I think what I would tell my 30-year-old self is probably, hey, don't be afraid to like raise your hand more and speak up more. I think there's a lot of times just because I respected the hierarchy of the business or the situation. Again, you always have to speak up respectfully. That's not that. It's just, man, if I raised my hand, like maybe things would be different. There was a ton of video games I would say that I wouldn't like, really, should we go after that genre or that game? I would have said like, hey man, I think we should do this. And maybe things would be different. So I think that's what I would tell my 30-year-old self. If I had to tell the audience, it goes back to like, I hear a lot like, oh, you got to work smarter, not harder. I don't agree with that. I think you got to do both. You got to work hard and work smart because I think in this day and age, man, sure, technology, AI, we embrace it. It helps make my life efficiently, but doesn't change the challenge. I still got to work my butt off to turn around my company, right? And so I think it's both. I think working hard, I would tell most people, or tell definitely younger people, work hard and smart. It's both. It's not just one or the other.
Yeah, no, I love that. It makes perfect sense. So, Artie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak. Hopefully, we'll have you on again soon. Congrats on all the success and the expansion outside of Amazon into Walmart and Target.